What is up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Breathe and Air podcast, where everyday action meets extraordinary mindset. Today, we have a friend in the most recent Bachelor, Mr. Clayton Echard. Thank you for joining the show, brother.
Oh, Mason, man, we talked about this day happening. I'm a little bummed right now because as we talked just before you started recording here, we did highlight the difference in our curls. As you can see, I always try to get to where you're at.
And you just gotta let it grow,
man. It doesn't go back here. There's no curls. It's just a front only kind of curl. And I don't know what it is, man, but I'm trying to be like you. Now people can see where the inspiration has come from.
Man,
I don't know. Well, hey, here we are. We're here.
Yeah.
And two couple guys with some curls just looking to have a conversation.
Curly gang.
Sir,
Well,
yes, sir.
Man, I appreciate you coming on. You know, it's been really fun watching your journey. Obviously not your journey to growing the curls, but your journey through life recently and the ups and downs that you've been through. So I want to start with this. All right. You're standing in the locker room, you hear For Whom the Bell Tolls, and a bunch of your teammates are jumping around getting hype. What is the feeling that you're feeling in that moment?
Are you referencing all the way back to high school?
I am.
Oh my gosh, man. It's a throwback. That gives me chills because I still think about it. When it comes to football, there was no truer love for the game than in high school football. And me and my high school buddies still talk about that. It's like we all do. I mean, you're part of that group as well,
yeah.
Where it's like from that point forward, college, briefly NFL, it becomes more of a profession. But the genuine love for the sport, the love for the guys to the left and right of you who are just there playing for nothing more than to just be supportive of each other and try to bring home a W like that. Man, I love the Hell's Bells, man. It's just like that.
Yeah.
That just to me amps me up every time I hear it. It still brings back that nostalgia. And that was kind of the beginning of it all, man. That really was high school football, I think, is what began the transition of my life into the person that I am today.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think we'll touch a little bit more on that, but I want to know what it was like growing up in Missouri. Like, what was your childhood like? What are some of your fondest memories?
Oh man, my middle brother Nate. Obviously, Nate. I talked to you like that. Nate. But some people might have heard me reference him as Nasty Nate on the on the show. He's the guy's a character. But listen, he growing up with him and my youngest brother Pat. Household of 3 boys, and it was just mass pandemonium at all times. My parents, God bless them, like having to deal with that, us getting in little fights, playing football out in the backyard, kill the man with the ball, and just beating up on each other. And unfortunately, Nate would beat up on me a ton. You guys know I was kind of the runt. He was always the big dog until about college. I think I started big dogging him from that point forward. So, but yeah, man, I just like growing up in Eureka. I mean, you know what it's like. It was small town, I think population 10,000. Everyone shows up for Friday Night Lights. As far as things to do, I mean, we hung out in a commuter lot. I think that was so crazy how we just right off the highway, this little commuter lot, and we'd all roll up in our cars and the guys had their trucks and we'd just sit there and you'd either listen to music, freestyle rap, sometimes fight. It's like all the activity happened in that parking lot, and that was until whoever decided to throw a house party or a barn party, whatever it might be. But like that was it, man. Like that was growing up in a small town. It's just like little to do, but we found so many ways to have fun.
Yeah, a lot of good memories there. The commuter lot, that's a good one.
I wonder if people still go to that, man. I honestly still wonder if like the kids today in Eureka still go to the commuter lot, or if like that's an old tradition. I'd be curious to see.
I hope it carries on. Carries on. Yeah, they're probably recording TikTok videos though in the parking lot now.
They got me doing that. I'm doing it now. I'm hitting those moves.
Oh my gosh, I see you dancing everywhere.
Susie's got me doing it. I got no choice, man. I turned the corner in the morning. She's like, so here's a new TikTok idea. I would love to do this. I'm in deep, man. I'm in deep.
Yeah, that hey, the things you do for love, right? Tell me like one pro and one con of growing up with 2 brothers.
Okay. The con, I always like start with negative and on positive, right? So the con was probably the same as the pro. Actually, the con was the level of competition. We constantly just fought to be the best. That also ended up being the biggest pro because it motivated me to do more. I look back at it, and because I always felt like there was a period of my life where I was overshadowed by Nate, it started to drive me to want to be better. And at first, it manifested as anger towards him when I was younger and I was immature. I was angry that like he was outshining me, getting all the looked at by colleges, and started varsity as a freshman while I was on JV as a junior. I mean, it really drove me. There was a point that was like my junior year is when it hit me. I thought, you need to stop making excuses, stop expecting people to give you things because you just happen to get a growth spurt. Like, you need to fight for what it is you want. And that's my senior year of football. It's like when I finally was given a chance by Coach Sumner, as we all know and love that guy, old school as it gets, but he said, "Hey, listen, I see potential in you, but it's like, you got to fight for it." And I think he really kind of helped instill that fight in me, started showing, standing behind me and saying, "Hey, I believe in you, but you got to bring it." And that was where it became where with my brothers, having that constant competition in the house started to fuel me. And as I started to progress and actually find success in not only football, but other areas of life, we still compete. That's what's so great about it, is this dynamic that we have as a family. We still talk about who's doing the best in their line and respective lines of work. We actually all were in medical sales, so we all started kind of competing in the last year in that. I've obviously stepped away from that for the time being, but we're always competing and always pushing each other to do better. And we are supportive. And I think that's what's so great, is when you have people in your corner that are supporting you, they push you through those tough times. And Lord knows I've been through some tough times.
Absolutely. You kind of touched on it a little bit there, but if you can, sift through all of the crazy memories and lessons that you've learned in your career in sports so far, and, a lot of people don't know that about you, probably, that, you were on JV as a junior and then you had the opportunity to play at the highest level of the game. So there's a lot of growth that happens there in a short period of time. So what were some of the biggest lessons that you learned from that journey?
Yeah, the one that really stuck with me and still does to this day, and I just kept implementing it along the way from one level to the next, was the saying that hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. And that, for me, when I started working hard my senior year of high school, I was still kind of goofy, trying to figure out, I grew so much so quickly that I really didn't have a good grasp on how, I wasn't as fluid. I was kind of just a little bit more still like growing into my body. But I worked hard. So I just kept working hard. And so I had no scholarship offers anywhere, no D2 programs, definitely no D1s. And I decided to walk on at Mizzou. And at that point, it was just, okay, set goals that are attainable and then just keep working hard. Whatever you see your teammates do an extra 10%, 20%, whatever it is. And I just kept doing that. And I kept outworking the people that were in the room with me. I think The Rock, he says, be the hardest worker in the room. I love that. It's one of the guys that I follow as well and I look up to. And I think that's actually with his clothing company, like it's the tagline, but it's so true. If you are the hardest worker in the room, you'll always continue to progress. But what I realized is when you start getting higher and higher up, people start to match that level of hard work. And that's what that taught me. When I got to the NFL, everybody worked hard and everybody was ultra talented. And so, but I keep that mindset, is when you start climbing up that ladder of success, you have to outwork your opponents or your coworkers, whatever you want to call them, because eventually you get to a point where at the very top, those people aren't up there by luck. They're not up there by chance. They're up at the top because they work hard and they also are talented. And when you match those two up, I mean, that's when it's a deadly force, and that's when you get your dangerous. And so I think football taught me that, just constantly working along the way. Being patient, obviously you have to have that as well. That's a virtue to have. As I navigated through all this, I couldn't expect overnight success. That's another thing someone told me recently. I get all these, as I get to meet these people that are influential, they say, overnight success isn't built overnight. And it's like, yeah, there is no such thing as overnight success. Someone's been putting in the work for hours and hours and hours and hours, years and years and years. And then all of a sudden they get their big break. But yeah, all these things, so many thoughts. I mean, there's so much I could go into as far as my journey, because there's been so many learning experiences. But I would say that those are probably at the top as far as what I feel like I kept utilizing along the way to continue to push me up to that next level.
Absolutely. I always think about the camaraderie of a locker room and how that, really correlates with business and life. especially in sales. You get knocked down, people tell you no, you get cracked backed or whatever it may be, right? And you have to get back up and you have to be able to work as a team, right? And I think that's something that, I wish a lot of people could feel from the game of football specifically, is not only being able to fail and get back up, but also what it's like to be in a room full of 100 guys from all different backgrounds, all different ethnicities, all different walks of life. And then as soon as you step on that field, nothing else matters, right? You're a team, you're a single unit. And that's why I think sports is so priceless, because it really flows over into all aspects of your life.
1,000%. I don't think you could have said it better, or I couldn't have said it better myself, because the biggest thing, and I've preached that same message as I remember after college, as I talked to potential employers, it was like, what have you learned through football? And I thought you touched on it, but what's so critical about football is what it shows you is you can find something to fight for no matter where you come from. There's a common denominator that you can all band together with all different walks of life, no matter what someone's experienced, but you can all come together for a common cause and fight for that cause. And if you're passionate about it, you're more likely to succeed as a group. And if that's not a direct correlation into like any type of job, I looked in medical sales. Again, it's like the tighter knit the group was of sales reps that hung out with each other outside, that bounced ideas off each other, that, when they were in a pinch, that other sales rep, came from, maybe it's 7 p.m. at night and they're eating dinner, and that they're, their buddy's like, hey, listen, I just got jammed. Another case was added on. Like, can you come help me out?
Yeah.
When you have that camaraderie and you're fighting for a common goal to achieve quota or whatever it is that you're trying to achieve as a sales company, that's what football, I think, really kind of instilled into me, is like, when you love people, when you fight, stand together, and when you succeed together, you grow together, it makes you want to be a part of that team. And so that's what's so important about football, is it showed me that it doesn't matter if I grew up, on one side of the country and this person grew up on the other side of the country, and I came from, blue collar, if you're white collar, if you grew up in poverty, you can all find something in common with each other. And then what's so great is in the downtime, this, when we were in the locker room, those were some of the greatest times of my life, actually, was in the locker room, off the field. Yeah. When we were sitting there, guys are dancing, blasting, Lil Boosie, or whatever we're blowing, blasting. I'm freestyle rapping, they're freestyle rapping, guys are wrestling. It's like this giant, just this giant group of guys just goofing off, being dudes. Yeah. And, but we had some of the best conversations at that point, when we sat down and I got to ask questions from my teammates who were from areas where they came, where they didn't have a lot of opportunities. And I got to learn a lot about their backgrounds and realize that, like, they want the same things that, that I want as well, as far as having success, finding a family, but they fought their way out. And I learned a lot from seeing how hard they fought. And I realized if they can have that much fight in them, I can also have that much fight in me. So it's so cool that, again, when you bring people from all different walks of life, you can learn so much when you surround yourself with them. Yeah,
it really is an amazing thing. I think a lot of people kind of understand that background now, right? You're out of the league, you are in medical sales reps, and then all of a sudden, what's starting to happen here? How does the, ramblings of you having a chance to be on The Bachelor, or what prompted you? How did this come about?
Yeah, so I tell people, I feel like my 28th birthday last year was my quarter life crisis. It just hit me. It was really like, it was simply April 29th, that day, I turned 28, and it was a period of self-reflection where I kind of just sat there that night. I think it was during the week. I don't think it was a weekend, but that's kind of besides the point. But I remember sitting there and thinking that night, okay, I feel like what I'm doing right now is exactly what I was doing 5 years ago. And I hit a panic button. There was a moment where I was like, you haven't really progressed like you thought you would. Your life's okay. You're complacent. Just be real with yourself. That's what I realized. I was complacent. I was going through the motions. I was going into work, doing what I needed to do. Wasn't super passionate about it. Was good at it. Like, definitely gave it, 100%. I mean, 100% as far as when I was in that operating room. I mean, of course, I was like, this is like a loved one's on the table. I'm not going to be halfway here. I'm all the way there. Yeah. But I just felt, I looked at it like, is this something I really want to do long term? Do I want to be in this position? Because I had the ability to take over the accounts, and I would have been there long term. And I just realized in that moment, I was like, I don't think that this is where I want my life to be 10, 15, 20 years or for the rest of my life. And so I felt like I needed change. So I started to look into moving, whether it was within medical sales or outside of medical sales. I actually was looking into the Scottsdale area because Nate, had moved here, and so was Pat at the time. And I thought, family is so important to me. So at the end of the day, I was like, that's what makes me most happy, my relationships and my life. So I thought, okay, how about I move closer to them? So I started looking for opportunities out here. And as I did, I just happened to get reached out to on Instagram. I got a DM by a talent recruiter for the show. And I thought it was pretty wild. And I made a comment to Nate and Pat, and they're just like, you should do it, man. Like, that'd be crazy. But you never actually thought that it was going to happen. Like, I never actually thought it would come to fruition. Mm-hmm. But what happened was I started to talk to companies about in medical sales, and I actually almost accepted a job in St. Louis. And what happened was it just didn't end up being what I thought it was. I kind of wasn't given the full story, is my understanding. And as I talked to my company, and they kind of shed light on that job and how, hey, listen, Clayton, it's not what you think it is. And I went back and talked to that company. They said, well, yeah, we did tell you these things weren't going to be there. And I was like, no, you didn't tell me that. What happened essentially is I felt was no longer comfortable with that job. Mm-hmm. I had now told my company that I was going to leave, or I was looking for a job. So now there's that instability. Like, great, this kid's like 1 foot out the door. So how do we feel about moving forward with him? So with all of that uncertainty, I still had that talent recruiter in my DMs being like, hey, they really liked you. Let's go to the next step of the process. And I just remember praying and saying, if this is meant to be, Lord, then like, I'll just keep going through, interview by interview. And sure enough, by the end of it, they said, yeah, like, we'd love to bring you on the show. And I got to that point where I was like, you know what, if there's ever a moment in my life to jump, it's in a moment of instability. And it couldn't be more unstable than it is right now. With everything that just happened. My work is questioning if I'm going to be here long term. This is the time to jump. And I'm 28 years old. Like, if I'm going to make a career switch, this is the time to do it. So yeah, I took the opportunity, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to go on the show. What's the expectation? I was like, the expectation is really, I just want to go on there. It'll be a fun experience. And I thought, I was like, I remember looking at Michelle, and I was like, yeah, she's really cute. Like, this could work out, but I'm one of 30 guys. So what are the chances? It's 1 in 30 chance. If we don't happen to work out, if nothing else, hopefully some girl somewhere will watch the show, be like, I like that guy. And she'll reach out to me, and I'll be able then to get that part of my life locked down as far as finding a lasting relationship. Because to me, again, like, connections are everything, relationships are everything to me. And that was the one piece that I felt like I wasn't finding in Columbia. I also wasn't searching so much for it at that point in my life, but I just was like, you know what, I want to lock this part down in my life. I want something serious. So I figured, hey, what better thing to do than to throw yourself out there in front of the entire world, or United States, I should say, to just watch you on screen, and maybe someone will come find you and be interested in you. So that was my thought. And then obviously, as we see, it progressed far beyond that.
Yeah. When you're in that scenario, like, what is it like for someone who hasn't been in showbiz per se, or behind the camera? Was there a period of trying to get used to that? Was it weird? Did it feel more natural?
Oh my gosh, dude. No, night 1 on The Bachelorette, I thought about leaving 6 times at least. I remember I went into the bathroom and I was just like, what am I doing here? Because some of the guys they brought on were just absolute characters. I mean, it's like they'd been behind a camera or in front of a camera for their entire life. They came out blasting their personality, screaming at the top of their lungs, one guy walked in without any pants on. I was like, what is happening? One guy comes out of a plate. He's like on this, like in a dish. I don't know. It's just, there was all these things, guys coming on like, fire trucks. And I'm like, holy, and I'm over here getting my ass spanked with a ruler. And I'm like, what am I doing, man? Like, this is, the boys aren't going to let me live that down for one. I was like, all the cameras, when I stepped out that limo and I saw her, I was like, wow, like, she's extremely attractive, very beautiful woman. And then I saw all of the cameras, like 10 cameras just positioned all throughout. And then you just start to be like, you think really to yourself, everything I say and do will be recorded. And yeah, of course that takes a period of time to grow, to become accustomed to it, because yeah, you're just like, okay, so now I have a mic on me 24/7. I have 5 cameras on me.
Yeah.
And you just want to make sure, obviously, that like everything I say, I stand by, because anything can be taken out of context. Anything can be used against you. And so, yeah, you kind of make sure, like, there's that period where you're just a little bit hesitant. I was very hesitant at first. I was kind of quiet. I just sat back, and I was basically kind of a non-factor for the first half of that season. And then when I got to Minneapolis, I started kind of getting my wits about me. I was getting confident. And then Michelle threw the axe in there real quick, right when that confidence came through. And listen, she has really strong connections. These guys were incredible. But yeah, it takes a period of time. Absolutely. I'd never really watched reality TV, so I had no idea what I was getting into.
And it seems that you've made some really good connections with the guys, kind of sharing a bond of going through that experience together. Tell me what that's been like.
Oh man, yeah, I just got back from a weekend in San Diego it's the first time we all really met up. And it's just, yeah, what's impressed me so much is the strength of those connections. One of my closest friends from the show, Brandon, he came out to Scottsdale, and we had a hell of a weekend about a month or two ago. But I remember I was thinking after the end of the show, we were roommates for, I kid you not, 5 days. That was it. Like, we obviously were on the show prior to that, but we weren't roommates. But in Minneapolis, we became roommates. And just by chance, they just grouped us together. And I remember him kind of looking at me being like, all right, I'm with this guy. Because it's not like he didn't like me. Him and I just didn't really connect in LA beforehand. But then we became roommates, and we sat up at night after the end of filming. They take off all the mics and all that. And we sat there and we were talking, and we called it pillow talks. Like, we had 3-4 hour conversations every night for about 5 days, talking about life, how we got here, our insecurities, what we want in life. We just talked, and it grew this incredibly close bond in a short period of time. When I stepped off the show, I remember thinking, well, am I actually friends with this guy? Like, will I be long-term? I mean, I only really, had 4 solid conversations with him. But what I realized was, yeah, no, like, those bonds, they were stronger in that environment. It just kind of, because we were always around each other 24/7. And it doesn't matter if you have only 4 or 5 days with somebody. If you're spending 24 hours a day, that's a lot of time together. That's like, in the real world, you might hang out with someone on a weekend, and then you wait 7 days later till the next day to hang out with them. So like, you hang out once every 7 days. Whereas in this environment, for a month, we hung out every single day, 24/7.
Yeah.
If you stretch that out into the real world, that's the equivalent of like 7 or 8 months of knowing somebody.
Yeah.
So yeah, all perspective, all that to say, the bond with these guys, we all just understand each other. And there's a part that people on the outside will never understand, because we saw everything behind the scenes. We know how the full thing works. Everyone else sees what's shown on TV, what they can show in 2 hours.
Right.
And so we've bonded because we went through something that, very few people went through. And it really did. It is something that we'll be able to look back on and talk about for a lifetime.
Yeah, that's awesome. It reminds me of almost like a fall camp vibe. Like, you're going through it together, late nights, you're going through it. And then, those bonds are important. And it reminds me of something there when you're saying, you guys are talking about, life, insecurities, struggles, things that you guys have been through. And it makes me think that that's probably part of why the bond was so strong in the first place, because you guys were being open and vulnerable with each other. I feel like there's a bit of a, misconception that doesn't happen a lot between men these days. And that, if you are, vulnerable, it's a weakness. What have you learned through that? And kind of, how can you speak to that now that you've had these experiences?
I'm glad you brought that up, man, because that is one of the biggest things that I'm passionate about, is just being transparent, and being able to have any conversation, really. It does upset me that it seems like there are conversations that are still taboo, things that people don't feel comfortable talking about, because they're afraid about the way they'll be perceived. And men's mental health is one of those things. I think a lot of men, I know I can speak for myself, and I'm sure you'd say the same thing, but growing up, if you expressed emotions, if you cried in front of your friends, if you were upset or sad or whatever it might be, you would get ripped apart in a locker room in middle school, or even early high school as like freshmen, on the football team or wherever you did it, because that was considered soft. Like, you were soft, you were a beta male. Like, these terminologies that were used just for speaking your mind. And I don't know, it's just so deeply rooted in our society, I think, where it's like men don't talk about their issues, they hold them in. But the sad part about it is that's why you see, men's suicide rates are elevated as opposed to, versus women, and or just like they're higher than what they should be. And I think that's the biggest reason, is because men aren't talking about it. They're not finding ways to express those feelings and get them out, and they just hold them in there, and they bubble up. And then what happens is you have a moment that causes it all to burst out at once. And that's typically when men start to act irrationally and do something that is very irrational and is dangerous and harmful to them. So for me, I learned that lesson of just opening up and surrounding myself with men that were mature enough to have those conversations, and just trusting, one friend at a time. So as I started building my friend group, I started, having these conversations. Maybe at first it was just talking about, man, I'm having a bad day. And it's like, what's that? That my friend's like, hey, why? What's going on? Talk to me. So you start off with something like that, something little. And the next thing you know, you're talking about body dysmorphia. You're talking about depression. You're talking about, bigger topics. But I think, I started off kind of small, like just, I'm having a bad day. And you'd see your friends and be like, oh, did you talk to me? Like, what's up, man? Like, I'm here for you. And over time, like you realize when you can be vulnerable with your friends and they're vulnerable back, so much more about them, and you can relate so much more, and it strengthens those bonds. And then all of a sudden you get to a point where I'm at today, where I was able to be on the show very open and transparent about my body image issues to a group of women that didn't know me, with cameras on me. And I wasn't worried in the slightest to talk about it. I wasn't concerned about the blowback. I wasn't afraid about any guy saying in my DMs, you're soft for talking about this. Cause I'm like, you know what? No, you're not a real man if you're the one saying that, because real men are secure in themselves and they can talk about these things. And I know a ton of good men around me that are open with their feelings. And guess what? They're some of the happiest people because they're not hiding their true emotions. They're out there. They throw them out there for everyone to understand and see, and people learn from them, and they learn from them as well. And so I'm just happy you brought that up, because I think for me, as I move forward, that's something, and we can talk about that a little bit later or whenever, but I'm very, very much focused on wanting to be able to utilize, the platform I've been given to shed a light on men's mental health and being transparent and open with emotions, because the more we have the discussions, the more times we talk about it, the higher the frequency will be down the road and the less taboo it'll become.
Yeah. I think that really speaks to, the type of men that you surround yourself with too. I have one tattoo, and it's something that my dad, used to, it's a Bible verse in Proverbs. It's as iron sharpens iron, one man sharpens another. So the iron and the two hammers and iron. And that means so much to me, because I think back even, coaches and mentors, and even today, friends that you're able to have those conversations, the ones that aren't easy, they're able to shoot you straight, right? They're going to tell you the truth. And it's not because, they want to hurt your feelings, or it's because they want what's best for you, right? And you kind of have to zoom out and look around yourself and say, are these people serving me in a positive way, or are these people detrimental to my goals and aspirations and the things that I want in life? And like you said, you had that moment at 28 where you were like, man, what was I doing the last 5 years? I think a lot of people need to come to that realization of like, let's do an audit of my life here and actually like look at all this shit on the table, and how can I get better? And how do my goals correlate with my actions on the day-to-day basis? And Lord knows I am not perfect at it, but at least I'm aware and take inventory. And I think a lot of people can, take that home and use it for good.
Oh, 1,000%, man. I think the biggest thing is, the more that you discuss these worries that you have with other people, the more likely you are to potentially have an idea tossed your way that you didn't have the perspective to understand or ever even think about, conjure up yourself. And so what I've realized is the more conversations I have, as even just like dialogues like this, like as we talk, the two of us, it puts more thoughts in my head. And then I have more periods of self-reflection. I've had so much self-reflection over these last few months, like just constant self-reflection. But what's so great about it is through that, I can sit here and go, okay, here's where you're at today. Let's just lay it all out there. Here's where you're at, and here's where you want to be. So how do you get there? And it's like you're mapping out through periods of self-reflection, taking that time. It's great to have. Like, and for me, that 28th birthday was like that first period of like, okay, wait, I'm done going through the motions. Let me become, I'm just kind of complacent. I'm just kind of going through life. Let me pull myself back down to the ground, lock in right now, and address where I'm at, not just kind of like mosey around day to day doing the same old remedial tasks. Let me lock in here real quick, face reality, and ask myself, what am I doing right now? What is it? And how do you feel? Like, are you happy? I found out, I was like, I'm just content. I'm like, it's what it is. I'm like, okay, so you're content, but are you truly happy? Well, no. Okay. So what would make you happy? And like, that's what, again, happened around that point of my life. And now I'm in that constant mindset. Like, I'm in that period of life right now where there's a lot of things up in the air, but I'm like, every day I wake up, I'm like, are you happy? Yeah. Okay, cool. Then stay on that path. Are you not happy? Okay, no, you're not. Well, then what can you do to find yourself on that path towards happiness? And yeah, it's for me, it's always about doing something. Doing something is better than doing nothing.
Yeah.
And just, that's something that I've also carried in this part of my life where I'm at right now, is every day I wake up and I'm just trying to do something. I'm like, find something to occupy my time to be a little bit better than I was the day before.
Yeah, absolutely. The 1% better every day. I love that because it puts things into perspective. We get too far down the line sometimes, and it ruins the only moment that we can actually control, which is now. But I kind of want to go back to when, you're done with the Bachelorette, you get the axe, you get tossed out, and then it's coming back around and you find out that you're going to be the Bachelor. Were you expecting this at all?
No, not one bit. When I got sent home, I was happy. I was a little upset because obviously, like, on the date I had with Michelle, I had a lot of fun, and I was like, oh, I could really see myself dating her. Mm-hmm. She didn't feel the same way, but she was very, very mature about it, very nice, and yeah, let me down easy. And so I walked out of there though, and I was having conversations with some people around me on the show, and I said, you know what? I said, I'm happy that it is, because it.
Go for it.
Yeah. So I had actually, like, at that point when Michelle sent me home, I was, I kind of walked off, and I had some people around me, and I had one person come to me and tell me specifically, hey, we saw a lot of growth out of you during this journey. We saw this person come into their true form. They're excited. We saw it from the time when you came in, when you were timid, until now, where you seem like you have this new grasp on life. You seem very excited. So keep that fire under you and don't go back to your regular life. Promise us that. Like, don't go back to that prior life. Make changes. And I promised them that. I said, yeah. I said, you know what? I promise you, like, I will, I'll move, I'll reset my life and restart on a new journey. I just didn't know that about, a couple of days later, they were going to say, hey, so, about that, and you potentially wanting to, start new. What would you think about, being the next Bachelor? And that was a shock to me. And I remember sitting there, and it just didn't feel real. I think when that happened, it was a very surreal feeling. I just kind of sat there for a second, and I was like, wow, are those words, like, that's actually what I just heard. Like, you're not BSing me. Like, that statement was actually just said to you. But I had such a great experience on the Bachelorette side of things that I just was like, you know what? I had so much fun on that, but now I can be in the driver's seat on the other side. Like, let's do it. Like, I saw the quality of men that you all brought in. So if you can bring in the same quality of women, I'm going to have a hard time narrowing it down to the end to one woman. Like, it's going to be really, really hard for me to get to that point, and I'm going to struggle. And I must have manifested that, because I struggled.
I was about to say about that. It seems like you did. I mean, I can imagine making those connections in traveling to places and having these extravagant dates and, really looking for that. Like I know you were, it has to be so hard to kind of see between the lines sometimes.
Well, you know what it is that again, when you're in that environment, you are 100% focused on building relationships. You don't have any distractions. You don't have friends around. You don't have family around. You don't have work obligations. You don't have anything other than time to build these relationships. And so you are 100% on. Your brain is in full relationship mode, full go, and you see everything through that lens. And so you're just very, very much hyper focused on that area of your life. And I think what that does, it basically allows you to like really lock in and narrow your focus into that trajectory of your life. And then what you end up doing is you allow things to progress at a pretty quick rate because you're not being pulled out of the environment to go hang out with friends at a bar one night or, oh, I have a work obligation I have to do. You're fully in on this environment. So you just continue to invest more and more each and every day. And yeah, I mean, because you're in this little bubble of sorts, this little microcosm, you are just fully in that. And that's all you're thinking about. And your mind starts racing at a million miles an hour. And you start to just like, yeah, you fall hard. I mean, that's what happened for me is I had very real feelings on that show. Like I did fall for multiple women because I was so hyper focused on just trying to find my person. And I was giving everyone a fair shot, compartmentalizing the relationships to the best of my ability. Because as I realized, I was in an environment that was a polyamorous environment. It was dating multiple people at one time, but with the end goal of getting down to monogamy, getting down to dating one person. And so I had to adjust my mindset, obviously being a monogamous person prior to all this, dating one person ever in my life, like, or at one time, all of a sudden I'm dating multiple people. Now I have to like understand what that's like in my head. But then I have to get it back to the point at the end where I'm dating one person. And I think that's where I really found a lot of issues and I was lost and confused and struggled, was trying to navigate between that polyamorous environment down to this monogamous, final, relationship. And it just, yeah, I think I struggled a lot and people saw that. And I was saying things that didn't make sense. Like, why would you say it to someone you love? But it's like, but I thought that's in that environment. It just felt like that was the way to do it. I just didn't know any better because I never experienced it.
Right. Do you think it would have been easier with another guy? Because now what? It's going to be two girls with, like, what is that going to be like since you've been there?
I'll tell you what, I that'll be really intriguing to watch. And I am interested in watching it because I think that jealousy is something that we all struggle with, right? And to have to go into a show on national television where you essentially are competing for love, but now you're doing it with another person staying beside you, that now it's like, okay, naturally, I think people will compare. And I hope the women don't. I hope the two women realize like, hey, I'm different than she is. I'm my own person. I'm confident. And whoever, I'm going to be myself. And at the end of the day, that's all I can do. I really, really do hope that that's the way that they are and they can keep that with them. But I'll tell you this, like if I was in their shoes and I was competing against, or I was there and there was another bachelor with me and, he was a little bit taller, a little bit more muscular, a little bit better smile, whatever, it would be hard. I think it'd be, that's just to be in that environment and stay confident. I mean, it's going to be a true test of, your character to have to navigate that. And I don't know if I would be able to navigate it truthfully. I mean, I think I'd be constantly comparing myself and not feeling like I was good enough. And then if all of a sudden all the girls start to really like that person and the people that I like don't like me back, they like the other one more. I mean, that's where you can really start spiraling down a dark path. And then next thing you know, you're just spiraling down a dark path on national television where everyone's watching you. So I wish those two the best. I am really interested in seeing how that's going to play out. I hope they both are confident in first people because you're going to have to be in that environment. I mean, it's going to be a very challenging environment and they will both inevitably grow from that experience.
Yeah. As you're going through this and the whole world is weighing in on what you should have done, what you didn't do, and you're seeing this play back and you have access to things like social media. How have you been able to balance that to keep your mind in a good place?
Oh man. Well, I think the problem is I am just way too curious. So I had a lot of people tell me, a lot of former bachelor bachelorettes, to not not read my DMs and not look online. But the tough part is in these as I was watching the show back, I couldn't have a job. I couldn't hold a job because I was bouncing back and forth every 2 weeks to do press junctions and just to do all these different things where photo shoots, whatever it might be. So I couldn't hold a job. So therefore I could work out, but what was I going to do the rest of the day? I had to have a presence online to kind of like show people, hey, here's who I am while the show's playing, spark a little bit of like social media interest and all that. So I really didn't have any choice. I had to really dive deep into social media just to have a presence because I didn't have a presence prior. So, that obligation to, I don't even call it an obligation. No one was telling me I had to do it, but I felt like, hey, like this is my moment. I'm here in the spotlight, but I can also use this platform to show who I am outside of the show. So inevitably I got fully pulled into this online environment and I started to read the negative comments because they were right there along with the positive comments. Then I started getting DMs and my messages. And so as I was reading through them to see if, friends are sending messages, but then all of a sudden there's another message, hey, kill yourself. Hey, you POS, you narcissist, and it just like, they started to come piling in and it did get to me. I'd say like towards the finale or about like right around that point was my lowest point that I had been in a long time emotionally. Because I just was getting thousands of messages a day and they were, the majority of them were telling me how I don't deserve to have any happiness in life anymore after what I've done. And when you start to see the same messages over and over and over again, you almost start to believe them, even though like and that's where you have to constantly surround yourself with people that love you, that a close-knit group that can continue to pour love into you and make sure that you're as unshaken as possible. You have to have that support system around. And what I started doing was I started reaching out to the former bachelors, some bachelorettes. And I was like, hey, what was your journey like when you did this? And a lot of them told me, yeah, I had a lot of negative backlash too. And so just hearing that they'd went through it and that it gets better, just hearing that message, like it gets better. I started to believe that. I was like, you know what? This is a temporary part of your life. It hurts. Let it hurt. Just take it in for what it is, but understand that it will get better. And they were right. I'm not out of the clear by any means. I still am facing a ton of backlash. People are still upset with me, but at the end of the day, where I was at 2 weeks ago at my lowest point until now, it's night and day. Like I'm so happy now. I'm out of that spotlight. Really, I'm just enjoying my life with Susie, back with my family, with my friends, and I'm just back to living life. And it's been, that has allowed me to realize like all that pain that I felt and suffered throughout the season and went through and brought onto myself was temporary. And if nothing else, though, it was a lesson learned, many lessons learned. I failed. Sure. I failed at points. Failing is what's subjective, but for me, I felt I did fail at certain points, but ultimately with every failure, there's a lesson learned. And that's the way I perceive it now. I've switched that mindset. I'm back having that positive self-talk, having people around me talking positively, and I'm just flooding my life with positivity. And that's pushing out all that negativity.
Yeah, that's it. I always speak on that too with social media in general for anybody, especially someone in your position, because I can't even believe it, but you got to curate what you're constantly consuming, because like you said, you consume something enough, it's going to get ingrained in your brain and your subconscious brain is going to take over. It's like you're programmed to think and feel a certain way based on what we see. And sometimes it's not even right in your face, right? And it's a small thing that grows and grows and grows, but it is so important. I remember when I made the conscious effort, this was probably like 3 years ago now, to really get rid of all the junk on social media. And it really changed a lot of, my perspective on some of that stuff. But it's interesting, because I'm pretty sure Nate never had an Instagram either until you were on The Bachelor. I wonder why he did that.
Why would he do that, man? I can't sell my brother out. I think he just felt like he was missing out. He felt that it was time for the world to know, globally speaking, who Nasty Nate is. So No, I mean, he's been one of my biggest support systems, honestly, since the last few months I spent out here in Scottsdale. He's been my roommate. So we had a lot of these tough conversations for me that were tough for me. And I think he saw I was hurting. And, at first he was joking with me and kind of razzed me a little bit, and then realized, wait, Nick Clayton's actually bothered by this. And so we had those talks, but he put me in my place at points too. As people saw, like with my dad, did the same thing on the show. It's like, sometimes you need those people to give it to you straight. There's points where they're loving. You have some people in your life that are there to give you love, to care for you, to llisten to you. And there are other people there that are in your life to steer you in the right direction, but to give you that constructive criticism, to say, hey, listen, you screwed up. Like, you messed up. You're in this rut right now. Okay. Let's acknowledge it. It is what it is. How are you going to get out of it? That's quit focusing on what's already done, because what's already done is over. It's over. Quit dwelling on it. What are you going to do from here on out? And that's what the conversations, that we had. My family came in on the show. It was, what now? What are you going to do now? And I told them, and they were like, okay, that's crazy. But ultimately they told me, we support you and we love you. And we think, we'll stand behind you. And that's all I needed to hear. I was like, you know what, I'll go forward, and maybe I'll make more mistakes going forward, but I have their support. So that's all I need to continue to push forward. And it worked out. I followed my heart. And when everyone else thought it was over, when everyone thought that I hit the end of the line, when Susie walked out that last night and I was alone, I really felt like I had those moments. So I sat there out in the rain for like 15 minutes, and, no one came out to get me, because they're like, he's just having his moment. But I remember thinking, like, okay, I'm alone. I came in alone. I left alone. So how are you going to perceive this entire journey? Are you going to perceive this entire journey as a failure because you walked it out with the same thing that you walked in with? Or did you learn a lot of life lessons that you actually, even though you're alone in this moment, you've walked out with way more than you could have ever asked for? And that's what I've begun to realize as I've sat and reflected more. Is I learned so much about myself. I learned so many life lessons, things that I would have never have learned. I think I packed like 5 years of growth into 2 months.
Yeah.
And then, on top of all that, through following my heart, it led me right back to Susie. And that was the beautiful thing about it, was when it all seemed like it was all gone and I had to walk out of there alone. It's like I stuck to my guns, was like, gave it my all with her, and it ended up working out. And so, yeah, I mean, I think it goes to show for me, is like following your heart is something that I would push as well. Something I learned from the show is like, follow your heart. If you believe in something, if you really want to chase after it, then give it your all. And at the end of the day, even if you fail, you can at least say that there was no stone left unturned. You did everything you could in your power. So you'll never have to play that what if game. And because of what I did, I don't have to ever play that what if game.
Yeah, that's huge. As you adjust to this new lifestyle and, people knowing you and obviously having huge press, what keeps you grounded? You spoke on family and friends, but is there anything else that you do now in your life that helps you stay grounded?
Oh yeah. For me, it's just diving back into the things that have shaped me into who I am. So family and friends, like for me, that's what's so important. If I want to get back to like my roots, right? It's like, okay, you were in this really foreign environment. You were up on this pedestal, if you want to call it that, whatever. You were in the spotlight. Now you're out of it. Okay. So go back to the things in life that made you happy, that drove you to do more each and every day. And so for me now, what I do is, outside of just making sure that I'm keeping up to date with my friends and family and spending time with them, I've begun to listen to audiobooks, and I'm listening to really self-help books that I think for me, it's like, okay, things that pertaining to men's health in particular, taking time to do that, staying busy, working on my personal training certificate right now, because I have a passion for fitness. And so my thought is like, okay, just right now, take your mind off a lot of this negativity that's still around. Like, don't focus on that. Take your time every day, wake up and really kind of give yourself some time to breathe, but make your day busy so that you're focusing on progressing past this moment, because a lot of this negativity is all still temporary. It's temporary. It's not staying here for long. It's going to be gone. So don't focus on that, what's going to be gone in the next month or 2 or 6 months, whatever. Focus on what's going to be around in the next 5 to 10 years. Yeah. And that's where I'm at, is I'm just doing stuff right now that is going to still be with me, hopefully 5 or 10 years from now, and pushing all of my energy into those avenues.
Yeah. You mentioned training, and I think most ex-athletes can relate to this. Some guys, after they get done, they blow up. I've seen O-linemen lose a bunch of weight. I've seen skill guys get fat really quick. Like it really varies. But what is your relationship with training after sport? And, how has that, helped you in your life so far?
Yeah, well, I think what sports did is it laid the groundwork. It laid the foundation for a lot of my knowledge base that I now have today. So again, like as I went through year after year in high school, I remember the mindset was like, I remember someone came up to me one day, like, you work a lot of upper body. I was like, yeah, because girls don't care about legs. I could go back and slap myself in the face for saying that, my sophomore year of high school self. But again, I was immature. I was just an idiot. And, but what it was like, again, it's like over time, as I went into college, I started to really take it seriously, because what I realized was, if you wake up every day happy, then you're going to have a good day. But if you wake up every day and you're upset and depressed, then you're going to have a really bad day. And for me, as someone who, I'd say I have body dysmorphia. I was going to say struggles with it, but I've really kind of got it under wraps in the last year or two, as I've really started to hone in on diet, realizing diet's a massive part of the equation that I had the workout part down. I was working out sometimes 2.5 hours a day and realized, well, I'm not getting the results I want because I was overeating. So as the last year or two, as I started really focusing on diet, I'm starting to see the results that I want. And I can wake up in the morning, look in the mirror and say, hey, like, I like the way I look. I'm happy. And so that starts, the first thing you see in the morning typically is yourself, right? Like you walk out and you go and look in the mirror and boom. So if you can start off smiling back at that person in the mirror, then you carry in that day as you go into work as a more positive, happy person. But if you look in the mirror and you're looking at your stomach and there's a fold of fat there, or you feel like you look droopy, you start to be really upset, and then you go into work and you're already upset. You're like, I'm having a terrible day because I look terrible today. So everyone's probably going to notice it. When I walk in, they're going to be like, wow, he looks fat today. And I'd have these thoughts in my head back when I really struggled with body dysmorphia. But that's where, again, as I've learned over time from football to now taking things into my own hands, educating myself on a daily basis with like this training certificate, reading all the resources I can, and adapting to the ever-changing environment of fitness, because always new information is always coming out, but always reading into it and just being up to date with it. Football really kind of just laid the groundwork, like I said, and now I'm the one that's building on top of it with by finding reputable sources and taking that time and then using the little tidbits that I learned and implementing that into my life. And that's gotten me where I am today, where it's like I have control over that body dysmorphia. I am happy. And now I hopefully will be able to give back in the fitness world with my experiences that I've went through.
What were some of those big changes that you realized as pertaining to diet that you saw some big changes with?
Yeah, so the biggest thing for me was everything was trial and error. One thing that I realized at one point in my life, I think it was midway in college, I wasn't happy. I got a DEXA scan, so it was measuring my muscle to body fat ratio, and I remember I got the numbers back and I was upset. I was like, man, I'm high body fat. I was like higher than I wanted to be. So what I did was I made all these drastic changes. I remember at the time I cut out any type of sugar. So I stopped drinking like these protein shakes that we had that were given to us in college because they had some high sugar. I mean, like it was like 15 or 20 grams, but I just started cutting all that out. And then I started to stop eating certain foods. Well, what I was doing was I was cutting out so many things that I actually just restricted my calories is what I ended up doing. I didn't know because I was cutting out sugar over here, stuff over here. I was more health conscious of what I was eating, but I was trying to build muscle. So I was still working out so hard in the gym, but I was cutting out all these foods that I wasn't, because I was like, this is bad. This is high sugar. And so then what happened? After 2 months, I went back, got a DEXA scan. I had lost 5 pounds of muscle and put on, I think and I lost 5 pounds of muscle. I didn't put on any fat. I just lost 5 pounds of muscle because I lost weight because I was in this huge caloric deficit.
Yeah.
And that was a massive life lesson for me when I realized if you're going to make changes, make small changes so that you can see over the course of a month or two what's working, and then fine tune stuff. So then also make another small change. But that moment taught me that it's, at a basis, and it's a much more complex process. But I say this again, it's just through my experience. If, whether you gain or lose weight, it's a matter of it, whether you have excess calories, if you eat more than you burn, or if there's a deficit, if you, burn more than you eat. And so I didn't understand that concept alone. And I just, and through my experiences of failing, I started learning these lessons.
Yeah. It's really interesting because you get so many in the fitness space, especially in health. I'm very ingrained in that as well. And you get so many different opinions on, this diet or that diet and this and that. And I think that it all comes back to sustainability. Like, how are you going to be able to sustain this? How are you going to be able, like you said, long-term, see results that you can still live the lifestyle that you want to live and that fits in, your life, that's comfortable, and you can look in the mirror and you can say, I did a good job, right? And feel good as well. I think the correlation of how good you feel and the chemicals that get released when, you exercise and when you are hydrated, and your energy levels and your sex drive and like all of these things, right, are so important to us feeling, engaged and focused and vitality and all of those things. So it is very important. I think, we live in an obese nation, so it really is important what you're doing to be able to push that message.
Yeah. And I always want to stress as well that, again, it's like, I don't want to ever overstep my boundaries. I'm not a registered dietitian, I'm working towards my certificate right now in fitness alone. And something that I've learned through that is that I can give general nutrition advice, but, as far as talking more in depth, that's where it's like, again, everybody is different and every body is different. So you have to be very careful with making blanket statements, with throwing out, hey, this worked for me, so try this. Which you do see on the internet. A lot of people, there's so many different diets, and the best diet is the diet that works for you. So that might not be the best diet for somebody else. But you see a lot of these fads and things that come out, keto and all these different paleo and all these different types of diets. And everyone thinks, okay, that's the one I've been waiting on. Now that I have that, now I am going to lose the weight that I want to lose. And it's like, but is that sustainable? Like you said, is that sustainable? I mean, cutting out carbs, the US diet is very carb laden. So you're trying to cut out carbs, that's tough. That's requiring a lot of work to have to work around that. It's not impossible. People do it, but an individual has to ask themselves, do I want to give up carbs? One of the things that I love the most, is pizza. I love Mexican food. So Chipotle bowls, like I love rice, right? So I love carbs. So would it make sense for me to do a keto diet? No, because for one, I don't think carbs are the enemy, but two, if I gave that up, I wouldn't have enjoyment with what I was eating, like giving up my favorite food groups. Yeah. And so that's not the answer for me. There's another way around it. And I found other ways through just more so focusing on not overeating, that I've been able to find a good balance between, hitting the gym hard and building muscle mass while also gaining a minimal amount of muscle. So it's like, you got to find what works for you, but that's where it's through trial and error, talking to nutritionists, talking to respected professionals, and getting that information so that you can give yourself the best chance to succeed.
Amazing. I really do think that, with the platform you've been given and how hard of a worker you are through, your life so far, that you're going to do great things in that space. So all the best to you there. I'm excited to see how that pans out for you.
I appreciate that.
As you're going on this media tour after, the show, and you're going to Barstool and you're going to Jimmy Kimmel or wherever, what were some of the most fun interactions that you've had, other than breathing air, of course, but like, what were some of like your favorite interviews that you've had, people you got to sit down with?
I actually really like the people over at Barstool. Rhea, Fran, Trent, I had a few conversations with them, and they weren't the biggest fans of my decisions on the show, and they were pretty animated about them. But again, they had fun with it. I think, they questioned what I was doing, but as I got to sit down and talk with them, we had very real discussions, and we were open and honest with each other, transparent. And we were able to make light on a lot of it. And because of that, I really enjoyed those conversations. Like the interview style, 4 minutes, like, okay, here's an interview for 4 minutes. And I can only say, I love to talk, right? So for me, just to like answer questions with 10-second responses, it's not fun because I like having open conversations, open-ended questions, things that you can dive into and learn from. Interviews, those quick interviews are just rapid bursts of answering the same questions over and over and over again. And so any of those interviews where I was able to sit down, have a 30+ minute to an hour conversation, those are my favorite conversations because I think so much happens in those conversations and you can learn so much. And I've learned a lot more on those than just doing those interviews. Yes, the interviews, you're on these big platforms and you push yourself out there. And I think those interviews give you the ability to be seen by a lot of people. So then hopefully they come in and they watch a podcast like this and they go, oh, I listened to this hour-long podcast and I got to learn a ton about this guy that I wasn't able to learn in a 2-minute interview with Good Morning America.
Right. What is next for Clayton? In 5 years, where are you? What are you doing? What's life look like?
Man, I wish I could tell you what 5 years looks like. I can't even tell you what the next 6 months looks like. But that's what's exciting, right? There's so many moving parts right now. So this is what I can tell you as far as what is in front of me today. I'm working on my certified personal training certificate right now. I'm probably 2 weeks away from finishing that. So I'll have those credentials to be able to more confidently speak on that subject matter and give back in that realm. Beyond that, then once I'm knocking that out, I'm going to start writing up material to motivationally speak on topics with men's mental health and body dysmorphia, things that I've experienced that I'd love to be able to give back. I'm going to therapy right now. I'm in the process of scheduling some therapy. And it's great. I want to be able to talk about that. Like men should be able to talk about going to therapy. Great things can happen from those discussions. So I have all those things that I'm focusing in on. And then, I am trying to work for a company, a fitness company, a large corporation, where I could be a potential group instructor. So that part of it, I'm starting to have discussions with companies, and it's very early in the process. There are no guarantees, as there never are in life anyways, but my ultimate goal would be to be able to get on with a big company and then be a group instructor, and then be able to do that and be able to have that platform on the fitness side, and then also then travel around the country doing speaking engagements. Those two things would be, I'd be over the moon. I'd be so happy. It'd be my true calling in life, and I'd be extremely passionate about it. And obviously, with saying all of that, still building this incredible relationship that I have with Susie. She has been in my corner for the last 4 or 5 months, where she was the one person that understood me, that went through it all with me. And she's gotten me through a lot of these dark times. She did push me through a lot of these tough moments. I've never met someone so encouraging that just is such a powerful person with like the mindset that she possesses, the love that she has for not only others, but just for herself. I mean, she's incredible. And having her in my life has made me a better human being. And so 5 years from now, I mean, as of right now, it's going great. We know that no relationship is 100% foolproof as far as being able to survive throughout the entire course of life. But for right now, we know that, and we're just having fun. And every day we wake up and we just try to love each other more each and every day. And we've done that. And so, yeah, I think at the end of it all, through all this mayhem, one thing's for certain, one of the biggest loves of my life is her, my family and friends, keeping those relationships going, just making sure that I take time to prioritize building those relationships. And then the other piece is, they'll fall into place accordingly.
Yeah, absolutely. What is your definition of success?
Oh man. Yeah. Everyone's definition is different. Right. And for me personally, and this is just me personally, I want to say it's not for others, but for me personally, success from a financial standpoint, I want to be at a place where I don't have to worry about finances, where I can truly do what I want to do, my true passions, and I don't have to be reliant upon some job that I don't like or don't want to show up to, but I am showing up to them on a day-to-day basis because I need a paycheck. Like, I want to be able to find that success where I can truly just do what I love and pour into that and find my true purpose in that realm. So that's success from a financial standpoint. Success from a relationship standpoint. I want a long lasting love, like with my, with my partner being Susie right now. Like, I want to build a relationship that lasts a lifetime. And so success to me is that. But I don't think it's a failure if they don't, through everything you can learn lessons. But to me, ultimate success relationship is a lifelong relationship with somebody. So that looks like success for me in that front. And then, yeah, I mean, I think those two things through relationships, friends and family, that same thing as well, like making sure you continue to pour into that and they stick with you and you have the right people in your corner. But I think if you have love in your life, if you have the finances to support your life, I think those two things will put you in a very good state of mind and a really positive, and have good mental well-being. That I think with all of that, with those two things coupled together with a positive mindset, I think that's the best way to attack life. And that's where you have the most success. And that's where you can really make a difference, not only in your life, but then you can start to pour into other people's as well. So that's what success looks like to me.
Amazing. Clayton, where can everybody find you online? I think it's pretty straightforward at this point. But you can
really straightforward. I'm pretty sure all of my social media accounts are Clayton Echard. Some of them have maybe a period in between Clayton and Echard. Honestly, I don't even know. I think Instagram's Clayton Echard. I have a TikTok. That's rough, but I'm trying my best to put up stuff that's fun.
Quite the dancer.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that as well. TikTok. I have a Twitter, same thing. I think it's Clayton Echard. So yeah, just really those main social media sites is where people can find me online. And yeah, as more things happen here in the near future, I will use a lot of those avenues to put out the messages that I want to put out.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show, Clayton. Look forward to giving you some more dubs in fantasy down the road.
Oh my gosh.
I know the boys miss you.
They want me to come back in and play fantasy football, but nothing wrecks my Sundays more than playing fantasy football, because I get so mad that I lose every year to the guy that never watches football. And they're the ones that they act, and then afterwards they want to act like they're professionals. Like, yeah, I picked this guy. No, you auto drafted. That's why you have him. I don't know, man. My well-being right now, I'm like, do I want to dedicate?
You're like, I'm in such a good place. Why do I need this?
I'm in a great spot. I can't tell you how many times I had to shut off the TV and storming around the house because I lost because my player got injured that day. So yeah, we'll see, man. Let me put some more thought into the fantasy football environment and see if I want to get back into that.
Well, man, thank you so much for coming on. I wish you nothing but the best. And man, it's been a pleasure.
Absolutely, Mason. Really appreciate it. Great talking to you.
All right, everybody. If you enjoyed today's episode, share it with someone who you think could benefit from it. That is the price of admission today. Share it with somebody and then put it into action. Hit the purple subscribe button, rate the show, and let me know what you thought in the comment section below. So thank you guys so much for tuning into another week, and have a kick-ass rest of it.